On July 17, 1981, a single steel nut tightened onto a single steel rod was carrying twice the weight anyone had designed it to hold. Nobody who walked across the walkway above it that evening could have known. Within seconds, that one connection failure took 114 lives, making it, at the time, the deadliest structural collapse in American history. The Hyatt Regency Kansas City opened in 1980, the anchor of a new commercial complex called Crown Center. Its atrium was the centerpiece, 50 feet tall, with glass elevators and 3 walkways suspended in open air, connecting the guest tower to the conference block on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floors. It was the kind of dramatic open interior architecture that hotels loved in this era. And on the evening of July 17, 1981, close to 1,600 people filled that atrium for a Friday tea dance, a regular event with a live orchestra, drawing dancers and spectators alike. Around 40 people stood on the 2nd floor walkway, another 16 to 20 were on the 3rd and 4th stations. The 4th floor walkway hung directly above the 2nd, meaning if one failed, there was nothing to stop it from taking the other down with it. Here's the design as engineers originally drew it. Steel rods would run continuously from the atrium ceiling all the way down through both the 4th floor and 2nd floor walkways, each held in place by a nut and washer at the bottom. In that design, the nut supporting the 4th floor only had to carry the weight of the 4th floor walkway itself. The 2nd floor's weight was carried separately, further down the same rod. But building a single rod that ran uninterrupted through 2 stories of the atrium, threading a nut onto it at the very top 50 feet up, was extremely difficult to construct in practice. So during construction, the steel fabricator proposed a change. Instead of one continuous rod, used 2 shorter rods. One would run from the ceiling to the 4th floor walkway. A second separate rod would then run from the 4th floor walkway down to the 2nd floor walkway. On paper, to many engineers glancing at it, this looks like a reasonable substitution. It's simpler to build. The rods are shorter. But the 2 designs are not structurally equivalent, and the difference is easy to miss if you don't trace the load path carefully. In the original design, the connection at the 4th floor only supported the 4th floor's own weight. In the revised design, that same connection now had to support the 4th floor's weight and the entire weight of the 2nd floor walkway hanging from it below. The load on that single connection had effectively doubled. This change was approved over the phone, without a full engineering recalculation, and the drawings moved forward. Investigators later found that even the original design would only have met about 60% of the Kansas City building code's required load capacity. The modified design lowered that number to roughly 1/3 of what the code required. For a year, the walkways held foot traffic, static weight, ordinary use. None of it came close to exposing the floor. Then came the night of July 17, 1981. With dozens of people standing and dancing on the 4th and 2nd floor walkways simultaneously, the load on that modified connection finally exceeded what the welded box beam could bear. Investigators would later confirm the steel and the welds themselves were sound. They simply were never asked to carry a load anywhere near what the revised design placed on them. The connection failed. The 4th floor walkway dropped and collapsed entirely onto the 2nd floor walkway directly beneath it. Both crashed to the crowded atrium floor. 114 people died that night. Over 200 more were injured. It remained the deadliest accidental structural collapse in US history until September 11, 2001. What makes this collapse so widely studied isn't just the tragedy, it's how quiet the fatal decision was. This wasn't a wildly experimental design pushing the boundaries of engineering, like a resonance-prone bridge. It was a small, seemingly practical substitution made mid-construction that doubled a load nobody rechecked. Investigators identified a chain of failures behind that one bad connection. The design change was approved by phone rather than through formal engineering review. No one recalculated the new load path in writing before construction proceeded, and there was no redundancy in the design. No alternate path for the load to travel if one connection failed. When that single point gave way, there was nothing to stop the collapse from cascading. It's also worth noting this wasn't the first warning. During construction in 1979, a section of the atrium roof had already collapsed due to a separate connection failure, repaired and, at the time, treated as an isolated incident rather than a signal to scrutinize the building's other connections more closely. The engineering firm responsible lost its license to practice in multiple states. The individual engineers who sealed the drawings lost their professional licenses as well, though no one was criminally charged. The Hyatt Regency reopened in October 1981, its atrium rebuilt with a single walkway, supported directly by columns anchored into the ground, removing the suspended cascading design entirely. More broadly, the collapse reshaped how the engineering profession handles design changes made after a project is approved. It's now standard practice that any modification to an engineer's sealed design must go back through formal review. Not a phone call, not a verbal approval, no matter how minor the change appears. Patience. The Hyatt Regency walkway collapse is still taught today in engineering ethics courses, not as a story about bold designs pushing structural limits, but as a warning about how catastrophic a small, unreviewed change can be, and why the responsibility for catching it never stops being the engineer's own.